Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the What Really Happened podcast. I'm your host, Carter Hall. With me today, I have a very good friend and who's going to help me break down UFC 280 that happened this past weekend in Abu Dhabi. Matt Long, how's it going, dude?
Going good. How about you?
Good, man. Thanks for joining again. I mean, seems like you kind of become like a co-host in a way, a little bit with this podcast. So much we talk about UFC and MMA and stuff like that. But like I had mentioned earlier, UFC 280 happened this weekend. What do you think initially, overall? Like, um, what are your initial thoughts about the whole pay-per-view?
I was mostly surprised about how most of the fights were very competitive, except for the co-main. Just felt bad for TJ Dillashaw after what happened to his shoulder. It was unexpected because it happened so quick, and then next thing you know, it's a one-sided fight in that co-main fight.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that Cole-Main, I felt pretty bad for TJ as well. I mean, that's not like how, I mean, I have a lot of respect for TJ. I'm a big fan of his, but I felt like I was like, man, that's not how I want TJ to go out, because I felt like he got, hit pretty, hurt pretty, I can't speak. He got hurt pretty early, pretty on, and if that's a right wording, yeah, I'll go with it. But he got hurt early, and then wasn't able to really get back into it because he popped his shoulder out a couple of times with a dislocation, and that kind of stinks the way that it happened. But um, he said early on, I felt like even from the prelims down to with the extension of the co-main, everything else from the prelims down to the main event seemed like it was pretty competitive.
Yes, it was. Back to the co-main. Yeah, when TJ like messed up his shoulder, he could only throw a punch with one. I can't even talk either. With one hand, and like it just made it more one-sided because like you just have that one hand to try to do something, and they're gonna figure you out right away.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the person he was fighting, I felt like it's really even hard to fight him with two hands, but all it's one hand. It's like he's already like with that one hand. It felt like a kind of a disadvantage. I was listening to broadcasters and anything like that, like DC and John Anik and all those guys talking about how before the fight, I think TJ was trying to pull DC. A lot of a lot of nestles I felt like are being thrown around. TJ Dillashaw was trying to talk to Daniel Cormier, I think before the pay-per-view, trying to pull him aside, but I guess they weren't got too busy. But I guess DC made a comment like along the lines of like he was trying to pull me aside to tell me something, but never got the chance to. In the post-fight interview, DC was like, "Man, was it your arm that you were trying to tell me about?" And TJ was like, "Yeah, that's what I was trying to like." Man, my mic's falling. But yeah, he's talking about like, yeah, man, like that was my arm. I dislocated it like 20 times, like 15, 20 times in camp, whatever. I was like, man, that's crazy. And he told the ref too beforehand, he's like, hey, my arm pops out, don't stop the fight. What does it gives me? I feel like a lot more credibility to TJ, for getting the octagon to fight.
Yeah, it was. I was actually rooting for him to win the belt again, but it just didn't go his way.
No, it really didn't. I mean, that was just a oh, man. I feel like if you were to switch Sugar Sean O'Malley's fight, which I want to get into with you in a little bit, but if you want to switch the co-main with Son's fight, I feel like that would have been a great fight too. But of course, it was a title fight. The co-main event was a title fight, so I really felt like you really need to obviously put that title fight in the co-main too. But it was so crazy. I mean, I don't know. I felt bad for TJ at the end of the day because you could tell he really tell you wanted to recapture that title again. That he really never really lost technically.
Yeah. Um, who knows what's next in store for TJ Dillashaw after that?
Yeah, I mean, do you think you don't think retire? You don't think he's thinking about retiring? Do you?
Uh, I don't think so. I mean, he just barely got back in to fighting again after the suspension, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy too. And what's next? I mean, I always forget his name. I remember I see his face, but who? I mean, I watched it, but who was his opponent? I'm blanking for some reason. I can't remember his opponent's name. that he fought on Saturday. Do you remember TJ's opponent?
After the suspension.
Yeah, that's title fight. This is the co-main event that just happened.
Oh, you're talking about Aljamain?
Yeah, Aljamain. I don't know why I was about to say something. I was like, I was going to say someone else's name. I was like, that doesn't sound right. I could see his Aljamain's face. I was like, that's not his name. Hold on, what was it? So, but yeah, do you think what's next for Aljamain? Do you think?
Well, I think Sean O'Malley gets the title fight.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be pretty nice. Kind of speaking about Sean O'Malley, what do you think about that whole fight? Because I remember I wasn't able to watch that one match, but what do you? Because I remember all of a sudden like I was out grabbing something to eat for lunch, and all of a sudden I got a message from you saying like Sean O'Malley did it. I'm like, oh man, what did he do? I mean, I wasn't able to watch it. I mean, can I take us through it like through your perspective? What did you see? What did you like, dislike, and stuff like that?
Well, oh man, that fight had me on the edge of my seat from the first round to the third round, man. And he didn't knock Jan out like Sean wanted to. I mean, Jan got a chin, but however, those two were throwing some bombs, man. Sean even wobbled Sean. No, excuse me. Sean even wobbled Jan a couple of times from some right hand shots over the top, and even Jan wobbled Sean a couple of times too. It was just back and forth, back and forth. But Jan mixed it up with some wrestling too, and actually got 6 takedowns.
Oh wow, that's what I didn't get to watch it live, but I did go back and watch like on YouTube like different like clips of the fight and highlights and everything like that. I was surprised that Peter like I'm not surprised that Peter wrestled because he has that background, but I was surprised that he went in there and actually like you said wobbled him a little bit. I got to see a couple. It looked like haymakers thrown at Son and Son threw some back, but it felt like, we really in this fight, it seems like we got to see. I could be completely wrong because I didn't watch it live, but you could probably, fill in the gaps. But from what I saw, it seemed like, Son, we got to see a little bit of how Son has his defense in wrestling and grappling a little bit. Obviously he doesn't have, he's more of a kickboxer and striker and things of that nature. So wrestling really isn't, it maybe his forte's go to initially. But, we got to see how his takedown defense is and grappling takedown defenses and anything like that, but it seems like it was pretty solid. What do you think of that? Did you think it was pretty solid from what you saw, or what'd you see?
Um, what I saw is that in my opinion, I thought Sean was done after he got taken down to the ground because Sean's a good, or not Sean, Jan is a good wrestler, and Jan is good on the ground and pound too. So I was a little scared for Sean at the time, but like Sean actually stayed in the fight and he won by split decision, which was a crazy ending in my opinion.
It was for sure. It was a crazy ending. I remember I was like so like really hoping that Son would get the W in this fight because I feel like Son's going to be one of those. We always say it. It seems like every time we talk about Son on this podcast, but it feels like Son is going to get a title fight soon. It's only a matter of when, I feel like he's always going to get that title fight soon. It seems like with the decision over Aljamain, it really seems like that could be the next, fight for Son. But if we always feels like we always do this, put ourselves in this scenario. But if you're Dana White, Matt, is that an automatic match to make for you if you're Dana White, or is that, or do you tell Son like, hey, one more fight, then you're the title, like you get your title fight?
I thought like rumors that like whoever won between the Jan and Sean fight was gonna get the title shot. Like like I read something on that. It was a rumor though, of course. Like
Yeah,
whoever won out of that fight gets the title fight against whoever won between Sterling and Dillashaw.
yeah, for sure. I think I heard something like that too. I remember like uh, even before I heard rumors about going into this Son and Yon fight that um excuse me, Sean really wanted, like he sent a message to Peter. I don't know if you heard this. I guess like either before, right before they made the fight official, or right when they made it official. I can't remember. but they said Sugar Sean sent a message to Peter. He's like pretty much trash talking him and everything like that. And I was like, that's so like gangster of Sean to do something like that. That's so crazy. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from Sean to do something, but I can only imagine if he gets that rumors are true. I can only imagine like the trash talk he's gonna do with Alchemain and anything like that if the rumors become potentially true. I can only imagine how Sean's gonna like present this match and get the message out there, because he feels like he has the same abilities as Conor did, as Conor McGregor, as at talking up a match. I feel like he's like that same capabilities a little bit.
Yeah. He's definitely working on his trash talking a lot. He's been talking a lot of trash about Cody Garbrandt at the time too. Like, seems like he does not like Cody Garbrandt at all.
No,
And before he fought Jan, he's been like sending messages on Twitter to Jan like that he wanted like to fight him. And then Jan finally answered, and then we finally got a fight in Abu Dhabi. It
yeah,
finally happened, and then we saw the outcome, and it is what it is. It like the split decision. Some of those judges, I mean, some of them don't know how to judge. I mean, some of them do. I don't know what they're watching or like what they're scoring off of. Like it just doesn't make any sense, you know?
yeah, for sure. I understand, but hopefully that'd be cool if Sugar gets that title fight and wins. He's one of those two promoting fights or anything like that, especially his own fights and things of that nature, trash talking. But I keep thinking, like, I keep going down the rabbit hole of daydreaming of like, and if Sugar Sean gets a title fight and wins, knocks him out and wins, who could be his potentially his first opponent? I try not to think too much like that, but I'm trying to think like, oh man, that's so like such a fantasy land to think of who Sugar Sean can beat. Um, I keep thinking like Tito Vera is a name that keeps popping up a little bit. I mean,
Yes.
do you think I keep thinking for the title, like Sugar Sean versus Cheetah. I mean, Cheetah and everything. I was like, man, that'd be such a cool fight. But okay, we're playing like down the line, like later down the line. If let's say just in a fantasy land, if excuse me, if Sugar wins the title against Aljamain, who do you see Sugar being the next, his first title defense against?
I had Cheeto Vera on my mind as soon as you said that because they still have some unfinished business after what happened in 2020. Sean messed up his what was his ankle or leg. It was one of those two things, and I felt like that wasn't really the correct way to end a fight, you know.
Yeah,
And then I also think maybe Corey Sanhagen.
that'd be a good one too. That'd be another really good fight too. But man, those are really good opponents, I think, for Sean too. If he wins the title, I mean, with Tito Vero being like unfinished business, like you said, I think that was the first person that came to like my mind. I was like, man, that would be such a good fight for title fight, and the levels of expectations rise so much. I'm like, I can only imagine that fight. Like you said, those are really good opponents. Yeah, I just but first we need to get Sean O'Malley a title fight first. It's so crazy that he's been so dominant. Like O'Malley's been so dominant, and he's never had a title fight yet in the UFC. It's just so crazy. It's just so like I can't really. It's close. It's really super close, but and it's so crazy to think he's never had a title fight so far.
Especially like before the fight, his fight against Pedro Munoz when it went
Yeah,
down to a no contest, and he goes and beats the number one contender. Like the fight game, it's just crazy sometimes.
it really is. I remember watching that fight against Pedro Munoz, and I think it was an accidental, I think, eye poke that pretty much ended the whole fight and everything like that through a no contest. I was really hoping, like, man, I really want that would have been a really good fight. I mean, it was a good fight up until that point where the ref stopped in and stopped the fight. But I feel like that was a really good fight with Pedro and O'Malley. But it's so crazy. Like you said, he being number one contender. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good. What am I trying to say here? I can't speak. Sean, I felt like really was like he's really up on his way to being successful. I think so far it's all up from here. I think for Sean.
Yeah, he definitely belongs. He definitely belongs in that division, and I felt like he proved it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think he proved it in this last fight?
I think he did. He gave Jan some trouble, and for the first time ever, Piotr Jan got cut
Yeah,
bad.
he
Like he was
did.
bleeding like on his like it was either on the head or on the cheek, but like you could see blood just all over Jan's face, which I have never ever seen happen before.
Yeah, I think you and I were talking about that a little bit too on Instagram on Saturday, and I even heard, I think, a comment about that from what I think from one of the commentators saying like how I got caught up and anything like that. But if I remember right, but I was like, and I'm surprised that hopefully it doesn't stop the fight. I mean, I don't want another no contest for Sean. Two fights so quick, so close to each other that ended in a no contest. That's the last thing I wanted for Sean to go all the way to Abu Dhabi, just get a no contest. That was the last thing I wanted for Sean, or lose. Yeah,
Yeah, the cut happened like at the third round too. So
yeah. I mean, that was a pretty good fight. I think the whole card, like we keep saying, the whole main card, I think was pretty good. But something about those last three fights, I think, are what really made the card like solid. I think I could be wrong, but just on paper, those fights look good.
yeah,
What do you think about? Okay, we talked about the co-main and the main. Excuse me, no, the co-main and the third to last fight on the card. But was there any other fights that like in the prelims or the main card that really spiked your interest other than those two matches we just talked about?
the last prelim fight, I was very surprised on Bilal Muhammad and Sean Brady. I was surprised how it ended because Bilal Muhammad was very criticized about his striking and more about his wrestling, how he couldn't finish off his opponent, how he would always go down to unanimous decision and win his fights. No, man, like he actually proved himself, and I think he actually proved a lot of doubters wrong too. He finished Sean Brady, and Sean Brady was undefeated before this fight.
Oh, really? I see that I didn't really get to watch any of the prelims, but I did see some of the prelims. I'm like, man, I wish I would have watched that fight. I just forget that different start time, so I was expecting to watch that 7 o'clock Texas time, but uh, I just forgot the time differences, so I got to watch only half a card. But can you kind of take me through what that fight like? You said wrestling and anything like that, and but what about that fight really like? Is there anything in particular that was big? Like, okay, this is like a good defining moment, or was there anything like in a particular round that like, okay, this is pretty solid. I like this.
Um, well, the way that Bilal Muhammad finished Sean Brady was very surprising, and after that finish, he decided to call out Leon Edwards and
Oh yeah.
Hamzat Chimaev.
Oh, I heard
But
about that. I heard about that. Sorry, go
but
ahead.
what I've heard also is Chimaev is supposed to fight Kobe Covington, and Leon Edwards is supposed to have the trilogy with Kamaru Usman.
That'd be
So
crazy.
I think Bilal Muhammad may have to fight either Gilbert Burns or um it's either Gilbert Burns or maybe we'll just throw in Jorge Masvidal. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I know we haven't seen Jorge. It feels like, at least I haven't seen Jorge in a while. I mean, when was his last fight? I mean, I'm trying to think who his last fight was against. Do you remember at all?
Colby.
Colby Covington. That's right. And he lost that one, right?
Yeah, in March.
Yeah, I remember that one. I was trying to think. I'm like, that can't be over a year. Then I remember you said Kobe. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that he lost. But um, that's so crazy. I remember, I mean, Kobe Covington against Jorge, and then gosh, Usman against uh Leon Edwards again for the trilogy. He's such a crazy. I'm still like in disbelief about the second fight between Kobe and not Kobe against Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. I'm still in like processing mode for that fight, but yeah, it's so crazy. But that would if that happens between Usman and Leon Edwards for the trilogy fight, um, it's kind of early to tell. But who would you have in that fight? Is there anybody in particular you think you'd want to win?
I think it's evenly matched, to be honest with you. I don't have a pick. We'll see how the betting favorites are going to be when we get to that. It's supposed to be at UFC 285 in London.
Yeah, that's so crazy too in London. It seems like London's and like all these like different places are getting like a bunch of great fights too, great cards. It feels like you kind of have to if you're going to like London or Abu Dhabi. You got to put on like your great matches, your performances. Um, was there any other fights rumored to be at UFC 285 in London, or that you heard of yet, or no?
Um, Chimaev and Kobe are in the works for one, but I heard that Usman and Leon Edwards is going to be a done deal soon.
Oh, okay. I mean, there's a lot of it feels like fights that are coming up that I'm really looking forward to. Hopefully that are true, that are rumored to be true, and I hopefully they are true. I mean, the one fight I think it's supposed to be at 282. If you heard this, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some rumors I think is that for 282, I believe in December. I could be wrong. I think in December, it's supposed to be a big heavyweight fight. I think with Stipe possibly. I think as I heard somewhere, Stipe has his name's been thrown out there.
I
Um,
hope so.
John Jones' name's been thrown out there for heavyweight. A bunch of different names have been thrown out there for 282 and stuff like that. But yeah, is there anything like you're looking forward to? Like hopefully, like if you're booking like Stipe or anybody like that for a heavyweight bout, to make it easier for a heavyweight bout in general. Forget like Stipe and all those guys. If you're making a big game UFC heavyweight fight, who would you be planning right now?
I mean, you said it perfectly. We need those two back out there. John Jones and Stipe need to get back out there. They haven't been out there since Stipe hasn't been out there since 2021, his title loss against Francis Ngannou, and John Jones hasn't been out there since his last fight in 2020 against Dominic Reyes. Those
Yeah.
two need to get back out there and have a fight with each other.
I think so too, because it feels like you said, we haven't seen Stipe in almost a year. It's been almost a whole year since his last fight against Francis that he lost. 'Cause I remember watching that live with a friend, and I was like, "Oh man, that's so crazy." But with John Jones, it's been almost like 2 years now since he's had a fight, and it feels like they're kind of that reminds me a lot of Cain Velasquez a little bit when used to fight. He used to take these big gaps in between his fights. It seemed like towards the middle and end of his career, Crane was dominant too. He used to wait like a year or even year and a half before each fight. It seems like that's kind of going. I don't know if that's just the heavyweight division as it is. I really haven't been like keeping a close eye on the brackets or anything like that. But it feels like if Don Jones and Stipe fight, it only seems right to me. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Being a fan, just daydreaming about this kind of stuff. But for me, it seems like if those two fight, the winner of that would have to set up a fight against Francis, right, for the title. It'll only be right, don't you think? Or am I just thinking wrong?
Um, I think you're right on it on this one. I'm I've been seeing that like rumors about John Jones fighting at 282, and he keeps saying he's ready. He's ready. Like he keeps training a lot and says that he's ready, but like we haven't heard anything confirmed yet, and we need to hear those rumors come true now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I mean I want as bad as like anybody to see John Jones in an octagon or ring. Octagon again. I can't speak. But it feels like I've always heard too that Dana is always saying like I feel like I've always heard Dana say like yeah I've been talking to John Jones a lot and anything like that. It feels like Stipe is really not going anywhere because I've heard him on his podcast and different interviews saying like I'm coming back for what's mine. So I'm not really concerned about Stipe not coming back because I believe he is for sure. and he wants that title fight against. I think that title fight for sure. I think secondly, Stipe wants that title fight against Francis again. 'Cause that'll be their third fight, right? If Stipe and Francis fight again, that'll be their trilogy fight, right?
Yeah, it'll be a
So
trilogy. If that one comes true.
yeah, so I think I've been hearing Dana talking like rumors saying stuff like, yeah, I think we've been in contact with John Jones a lot, and it feels like if John Jones and really does legit, like you said, he's been training, like you said, and it feels like if those two really go at it and they actually make a deal with Dana, like, okay, we got this fight for X amount of dollars for this date against this opponent. I think those circumstances, those big three circumstances of money, date, and who, I think are going to be, the big thing for John. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, there was also one more fight for 282. It's the rematch between Yuri Prohaska and Glover
Yeah.
Teixeira.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good fight too. Another rematch fight. Um, what do you like about that? What about that fight interests you? I mean, other than it being a rematch, what about that do you think interests you?
That first fight that they had in Singapore was pretty insane. They went 5 rounds. I didn't think it was even gonna go to two, to be honest with you. Because like those two have very strong hands. Just Glover Teixeira, man, like his age doesn't define how tough he is, man.
Yeah,
He is a very tough dude. Like he's got a chin. He was getting rocked by Yuri Prohaska left and right, and Prohaska has that reach too.
he does for
But
sure.
Glover has some power and nearly knocked out Prohaska. If it wasn't for him like trying to get that standing up guillotine, he probably would have finished Prohaska in the fourth or fifth round, I believe.
Yeah, that would have been such a crazy finish had he gone him into that guillotine, like you said. Excuse me, sorry. And that would be a good fight too, because you said like Glover Teixeira, he really has that power too. I feel like he can really knock anybody out. I mean, pretty much anytime he wants to. It seems like if he really wanted to, but that would be a good fight too. I mean, that's hopefully UFC 282. If the rumors are true, that'd be a pretty great card too. I think in December to wrap up 2022.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the main event too.
Oh, that'd be so crazy too. The main event to one of them like submits or knocks out one of them to end the year. The main event that'd be so crazy. I can
Oh
see
yeah,
it.
it's in December.
I can only imagine like the crowd ending and going crazy too if one of the like if uh Glover Teixeira knocks him out or something like that. Okay. So we were just talking about a little bit of technical difficulties there for a little bit again, but um so we were talking about Glover Teixeira at UFC 282 possibly in December. Um that would be a great fight to end the year with, I think, potentially. What do you
Yeah, the fight's supposed to be in Las Vegas, kind of like what happened last year with the whole Oliveira and Dustin Poirier. That was the end of 2021 with the pay-per-view fight. So they're probably going to have it in Las Vegas to end this year on 2022.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. I think that would make sense to do it in Vegas in 2022 and for December to excuse me, to do Vegas for UFC 282 in December. I think that would be a good place, to take it to MGM Grand or something like that, or somewhere there. But that'd be pretty crazy to end the year out with the Glover Teixeira and everybody there. But gosh, that would be such a big card too, with that rematch happening at the main event, and then you have potentially, hopefully, Stipe and France or Stipe and John Jones possibly set up a number one contender match for the heavyweight championship or UFC heavyweight title. That'd be so crazy. Have you heard any other potential rumors that like recently or no for fights?
I know that we need to talk about UFC 281 coming up in November
Oh
pretty
yeah,
soon.
yeah. Okay, so is there any potential fights there that you have piqued your interest?
Well, there's three great fights on the card. You got Dustin Poirier that's coming back. He's fighting
Oh,
Michael Chandler.
That's gonna be a
That's
great
a
fight
pretty
too.
explosive one.
That's gonna be an exciting fight. I wanna mark that too. Like, I don't know if that's the main event. I'm sorry to cut you off, but this will be quick. But that's gonna be a great fight with Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler. You know, it feels like that's kind of like a perfect storm in a way from Michael Chandler coming from, was it Bellator or something? Bellator, right? And then
Yeah,
coming
he came
to,
from Bellator.
yeah, coming from Bellator and having him face Dustin, who's been like this up and coming, like great guy in UFC. You know, it feels like, oh, that'd be a perfect storm. But go ahead. Sorry, what other fights are picking your interest?
Co-main will be Carla Esparza on her first title defense after getting the belt back. She's
Yeah,
fighting Weili Zhang.
that'd be a great fight too. A great fight.
And then the main event, I'm pretty sure everyone wants to see
Yeah.
Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira.
Yeah, that's gonna be a great fight too. You know, Izzy versus, oh, that would be so great too. Izzy coming back out with the Undertaker urn. That'd be pretty funny too. I mean, that's so crazy. I mean, I think, who do you like of those three fights that you just mentioned, is there any particular fights that you think, like, in those fights, who do you like? Do you have anybody like you think who could get, might be surprising or might get over, like, have their hand raised at the end of the night?
Uh,
Who are your picks? I'm trying, I guess, in other words.
Man, those are tough to be honest, because like Poirier has a lot of experience in the UFC than Michael Chandler, but Michael Chandler out of nowhere is competing with the top guys in the division. Dan Hooker at the time when he was at the top,
Yeah.
um, fought for the title against Charles Oliveira. Went into a not grudge match. Went into a striking battle against Justin Gaethje
Which is
and
a
went
nightmare.
3 rounds.
Yeah.
Um, Knocked out Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, that's crazy too to think of all that stuff, just being a strike, if I can get this microphone mic right. If have a striking match against, like you said, Justin Gaethje, that's like a nightmare and a half almost, because it feels like two people who are striking, like, just could have so much power and so much knowledge of striking and wrestling and takedown. It feels like those are like Sage, if I can speak right, reminds me of a little bit of Cowboy in a way, just striking and wrestling and judo, do all this different stuff. But, I think that would be a great fight too, with Michael Chandler and uh, Dustin Poirier. But what about the
Yeah,
co-main? What about the co-main? Do you have anything like, or the main event? Is there anything like out of those two fights that you think like, oh my God, this
it
person is gonna dominate the other person?
it depends how Whaley uh does on the ground because I know Carla Esparza is known for her ground game and a very vicious ground and pound fighter as well.
Hmm.
So it depends how Whaley is on the ground.
Oh, for sure. I think, yeah, to see how I want to see that too, to see how the ground game goes. For sure. Um, he's so crazy. Before we get into the main event for two F, sorry, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. I felt like for two UFC, like we'll get into the main event for UFC 281. I feel like we haven't talked about UFC, the main event for 280 yet. Um, for UFC 280, what did you like? What were your thoughts watching that too? I mean, I felt like potentially that main event at UFC 280 pretty much shaped so much. There was like that outcome was really unpredicted. It seems like, to say the least.
Man, it's just tough for Charles Oliveira because like he was the guy that everyone was all talking about in the arena and like even the commentators were talking about him so much and then next thing you know Islam Makhachev is the one with the belt now. So
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of the Leon Edwards kind of knocking out Charles. Excuse me, not Charles Oliver. Knocking out Kamaru Usman. A classic. I forgot his name. It's to say Charles Oliver. I'm like, that's not it. That when Islam submitted Charles, I'm like, I had the same exact almost reaction when Usman got knocked out. I was like, I even said out loud for like in my room watching. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I was really like, I was stunned. I sat there. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, Charles just tapped out. I never. It was so quick too. I felt like he rocked him with I think I can't remember if it was a right or a left jab or something, and then it kind of like rocked Charles a little bit. And next thing I know, he has him in like a head and arm lock, and I'm like, and he's tapping out. I'm like, that happened like so like that, and I'm like, so crazy. That's not the outcome I was expecting at all. I thought Charles was going to win that fight for sure, potentially. I don't. That's what I
Yeah,
was
me
thinking.
too. But it seems like Islam had a game plan, especially when you have Khabib as your coach, who
Yeah,
is a undefeated title holder at the time for the lightweight division. So
yeah,
I had a feeling it was coming.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I just remember after the fight, I was like talking like, "Oh my God, this is so crazy." And then I think you and I started mentioning each other like, "Can you believe that outcome?" And then we're just talking about it, and I was like, "That's so crazy that the fact that we witnessed something that was like so crazy, you know?" And I was like, "Man, I never would have thought Islam would have submitted, Charles." But like you said, when you have Khabib in your corner coaching you, your grappling and submitting is going to be your ground game is going to be just solid. But I was back in my head though. It's like if anybody can defend that, it's going to be Charles because his name is synonymous with the history books right now.
He's in the Hall of Fame too for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. And that's going to be so crazy. And what's this microphone? But yeah, that's like you said. This whole like UFC pay per view, UFC 280 was this one that was like so many like twists and turns, and like I never knew what was gonna happen. Like stuff like you said, like the co-main with TJ Dillashaw hurting his arm and dislocating it a few times, and then not be able to stand up to his standards or to be the beast I know TJ Dillashaw can be, and then you turn around and then watch that fight with Islam and Charles, and then you watch Sugar win by a split decision, and he's wrestling now. I'm like, never would I thought I'd see all this happen the way that it unfolded, you know. That's the way that
Yeah,
the UFC is though sometimes though.
it's just unexpected. Like the whole card was just unexpected twist. Kind of like watching a movie that you didn't think would happen.
Yeah, that's how it felt too, like watching a real life movie almost a little bit. It feels like, man, this is like a movie, like a script that came to life a little bit, you know? So I felt a little bit. It feels like Charles never really lost his title, you know? He never really like I feel like he never really had that real defeat, you know?
Yeah,
He just happened to weigh in a little bit over, and then now he got stripped of it. That's what happened, and then he said he's climbing the ladder. If anything, I'll give him a lot of respect for climbing back up the ladder to regain what really was his. He beat Justin Gaethje early on at UFC 270 something. I forgot what pay per view it was.
74.
74. And I remember watching that live with my brothers and everything. I was like, I feel like I love Justin Gaethje to death. I love watching him fight. But I feel like if if Justin goes in there to wrestle and do all this, he had to really watch out because Charles can get him on his back and submit him, and that's exactly what happened. And in the next fight he has, which is fast forward to UFC 280, he ends up losing to Islam. I'm like, oh man, he was like right there from regaining what he technically lost. You know, that's like a whole movie.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just tough to see Charles Oliveira not get that belt back. I think he got robbed on the scale, to be honest with you.
I think so too. I heard Joe Rogan talk about that too because I heard him say a comment too. I think in his podcast or I don't know if he said this on a broadcast, a UFC broadcast, or on his paper as a podcast, but Joe Rogan was talking about how these fighters like Paddy the Baddy or someone from different, like Europe or England, they use different like metrics, like kilograms. They don't really use like pounds like we use here in America. So when they go weigh in, they change it to different units. But I guess someone, I guess before 274 weighed in with kilograms. So whenever Charles went to go weigh in the pounds, he weighed the scales, I guess, routed wrong, messed up wrong, because they said that he weighed in at proper weight beforehand, and he re-weighed in for the actual weigh-ins, and he was off. So technically, I think I heard Rogan talk something about that. This is so
Yeah,
crazy. But yeah, the UFC
it
280,
just doesn't make sense.
it doesn't. And then he loses it. He loses his chance of getting it back this past Saturday.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's just it hurts for Oliveira, and it hurts for some of like the fans too that liked Oliveira. I don't even know what's next for Oliveira after this too. If it's a rematch or if Oliveira's gonna fight a number one contender, or I don't know how that's gonna work.
I don't
Because you
know either.
got Islam that's gonna be fighting, um, I think Alexander Volkanovski, who is now going after the lightweight championship belt now.
Oh, really? That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. That'd be
those are
crazy.
rumors. So.
Yeah. Gosh, that was so crazy. They feel like that's a crazy weekend for sure for UFC fans to be watching pay-per-views and stuff like that. But yeah, it's so crazy. And then top it all off, and then what's even crazier was what happened to UT also. Kind of switch different sports, but yeah. And
Yeah,
then yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
yeah. Please, no. Like, I don't want to relive that. That was awful.
I know. I don't want. I still hate OU teams. OU, OSU. They all feel the same to me. So
I'd rather go for OSU than OU any day of the week.
yeah, it's so crazy. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still not over it. I'm so happy that we still beat OU though, 49-0. But yeah,
Yeah,
Matt, I just want to say thank you again for coming back on, dude. I had a blast. Um, I always have a blast talking about UFC and different stuff because I felt like you don't just watch it, you actually know the rumors, actually like inside stuff that's going on too. So that's what we feel like we're always talking about. It's like on Instagram, like was like, hey, did you hear about blah blah blah? And we would dive into it and everything, and we always try to dissect it and everything. So um, yeah. So thank you for coming back on, dude. We gotta do this
yeah.
again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Yeah, for sure, man. Gotta have you back on for 281 and 282 for sure.
Oh, I can't wait.
Cool. Hey man, get well and I hope you start doing good, man. Thanks for coming back on.
Thank you so much, brother. God
Hey,
bless.
good man. You too. Bye.